seat. My apologies for your shortage of seats, but let's start this solemn affair. My brother-in-law was a great guy. You would get to know him today more and more when you hear from us. And I would like my niece, Bubbly, to Anita, to come and start the event.
Can't believe how many people are here today that we've known for so many years, and we're just overwhelmed with the kindness that we've been shown. And just going to begin. Well, we'd like to thank all of you for coming from near and far to honor the memory of our father, Surendra Mohan Bhardwaj, affectionately known by the nicknames Sam and Panditji by many here today. Just going to tell you a little bit about my dad's journey. Our dad was born in the town of Chirava, Rajasthan, on January 21st, 1940. As the eldest of three, he was a role model for his younger brothers who idolized him in every way. Their family of five moved to the city of Calcutta when my dad was about 6 years old, so that my grandfather could expand his practice of Ayurvedic medicine. My dad had high aspirations for his family. He knew he wanted to be the change that propelled the family to new heights. So the first change that he made was his last name, changing it in high school for his whole family, from the more common Sharma to the more unique Bhardwaj, following the name of the saint that the family line descended from. This was, of course, before he knew he would one day move to the United States, where the name Bhardwaj would be virtually impossible for anyone to pronounce, but that story is for another time. My dad was a smart and industrious young man who got into both medical and engineering colleges, highly coveted seats in those days. When I once asked him what made him choose engineering over medicine, his answer was simple. The engineering college was out of town, and he wanted to go away to college and have fun, as opposed to living at home and attending medical school locally under the watchful eye of his parents, and I totally got it. My dad attended the Birla Institute of Technology, or BITS as it's commonly known, where he experienced both intellectual and social growth. He was immediately the most popular guy on campus. My dad lit up any room he walked into, charming those around him with his sense of humor, quick wit, and open-heartedness. Friends gave my dad the nickname Panditji. Now, a Pandit is a Hindu priest, devout and religious. So some of my dad's ancestors may have, in fact, been Pandits. My practical-minded, fun-loving dad was called this in jest, since he was probably the furthest thing from a priest, but that nickname stuck for more than 60 years. My dad left BITS with a degree in mechanical engineering and a string of lifelong friendships. His first job landed him to Jaipur, Rajasthan, working for the automaker Hindustan Motors. This is where the next and most important chapter of his life began. He met our mom. The daughter of family friends, my dad met my mom, Indu, while visiting her family home in Jaipur, and it was love at first sight. He always told the story of how she came into my grandparents' living room carrying a tray of afternoon tea, wearing a yellow dress, and he was completely smitten. The two were married in 1964, and our little family, I came along a few years later, I won't say how many years, but our little family of little family soon began our journey to the land of dreams, the United States of America. Being the eldest brother, my dad led the path by immigrating first, and his two younger brothers soon followed. My uncle, Dr. Devendra Bhardwaj, or Dr. Chacha, as we fondly called him, started a medical practice, eventually settling in Indiana with our aunt, Vinay Bhardwaj, who we call Binu Chachi, and our cousins, Preeti and Rahul. My dad's youngest brother, Mr. Manikant Bhardwaj, eventually returned to India and settled in Jaipur with our aunt, Leela Chachi, and our cousin, Jaya. The brothers continued to revere their older brother, coming to him for advice and guidance for years to come. Upon arriving in the United States in 1969, my dad landed a job with an engineering firm in downtown Manhattan, Ford, Bacon, and Davis. He got a little apartment for us in Park Slope, Brooklyn. Surendra Mohan Bhardwaj was now known as Sam Bardway. as he forged a new identity in his new home. My mom and I traveled around the country with him as his job took him to exotic locales such as Marion, Ohio, Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and Boca Raton, Florida. My sister came along soon after, and our little family of 4 was trying to live the American dream, but sometimes homesickness for India took over, and my parents longed for the ties they left behind. When our family moved to East Windsor, New Jersey in 1978, much of that longing for India was erased as my parents truly found their home away from home. They met their forever friends, who very quickly became their family, and many of those dear friends have traveled from afar to be here today. This was our Twin Rivers community, the best friends my parents could have ever hoped for. There for each other in times of happiness and sorrow, this group of friends is still there for one another some 45 years later. Our family has received immense love and support from this wonderful group for decades, and for that we could not be more grateful. I imagine if I were to ask my dad's friends what qualities made him so special, they would probably say his huge heart, his intelligence, and his honesty. My dad would give you the shirt off of his back and think nothing of it. He would always be there to offer a strong shoulder of support to anyone who needed it. He was a great conversationalist, speaking with intelligence and knowledge on any subject under the sun. He would give you solid advice, being honest to a fault, never beating around the bush. With him, what you saw is what you got, and people respected that. He taught us to be true to ourselves, to be proud of who we were and where we came from, and to be brave in difficult times. He showed his bravery in the most difficult time of our lives almost 20 years ago, when our mom got sick and passed away soon after. Daddy forged a new life for himself back in India, back in Jaipur, and had to once again create a new community. He endeared himself to the people around him who went on to become his support system over the last several years. Our dear aunt, our Leela Chachi, her sister, dear Sheila auntie, and my dad's best friend in India, Mr. Aurora, gave Daddy strength, support, and care throughout the last 19 and a half years, and most importantly, in his final days. Here in the US, our dearest Vinod Masa became my dad's champion, caring for him from across the ocean, being there for him and for all of us through thick and thin, and taking the responsibility of becoming our new family patriarch. To our dearest Ashimasi, for being like a little sister to my dad, but always acting like a big sister, always caring for him and worrying about his well-being. To our dear Nikki Masi and Sanjay Masa, for stepping up and helping whenever Daddy needed anything, both here and in India. My sister and I will forever be indebted and grateful to these special people who have been our angels here on earth. To his dear family and friends, thank you for always calling him, visiting him on his trips to the US, visiting him in India, and for keeping him as part of your lives and in your hearts, no matter the time or distance. A loving husband, father, son, brother, uncle, grandfather, and friend. Daddy wore all these hats well. As we say a final goodbye to our dad and look back at the almost 83 years of his life, we are proud to say he left an indelible mark on many. Daddy, we hope you're looking down and feeling all this love in this room for you. We will miss you always and forever.
Thank you all for coming today. Being the youngest in the family, I was always very indulged. I got away with temper tantrums, everyone always laughed at my jokes, and I was always treated like a 10-year-old for most of my life, as many of you know. I went to India this summer, shortly after my 50th birthday, to spend some time with my dad. One afternoon while we were watching TV, he looked at me for a while, and with true sincerity in his eyes, he asked me, "What college do you go to?" At first I was taken aback, and then I laughed. I said, "College, Daddy, I just turned 50. And he laughed sheepishly, and he said, "Oh, you don't look it." His advancing dementia had left him confused at times, and when my dad looked at me, He didn't see lines on my face or gray streaks in my hair. He saw his college-aged daughter sitting and watching TV with him. Just as when I looked at him, I saw my dad, the leader of our family, the one who meticulously designed warehouses for companies all around the world, the one who finished not one but two basements in our homes, the one who spent hours building a dollhouse for me when I was well into my 20s. He was having a hard time recognizing my age, just as I was having a hard time reconciling myself to his age. He was fading before my eyes, and all I could do was try to be strong. My dad was strong. I think you have to be when you leave your home country and you fly across the world to build a new life for your family. As my sister said, he never sugarcoated things for us when we were growing up because he wanted us to be brave and face the challenges that life would bring us. And life brought us a big challenge with the loss of my mom. My dad was proud. He was proud of the life he created. He was proud of the support he provided his parents. And I know with all of my heart that he was very proud of his kids and his grandkids. My dad was a man of action. If you came to visit us from far away, he would not greet you with flowers and balloons the way my mom did. But you could be sure that you would get his special U.S. tour of New York, Washington, D.C., and Niagara Falls. He loved to plan every travel route in detail and every stop along the way. My dad was a giver. He gave to his friends and his family his time, his advice, his home. He would give and you would never hear about it, not even once. It's been a blessing for my sister and I to be reconnected with our family and friends for the past few weeks, as everyone has offered us support and shared memories of times that they spent with both my parents. And as we listen to the stories, we've spent a lot of time reflecting on the lessons that my dad taught us in his life. My sister and I have the legacy of both of our parents to pass on to our own children. And in order for us to do this, we too must be strong, and we must be proud, and we must take action, and we must give of ourselves. With parents like ours, nothing less than that would do. We wanted to take a few minutes to share my dad's life and celebrate my dad's life through a slideshow.
Now, my brother-in-law Ethan and Jathan will come up and say a couple words for my dad.
When Rita and I got married back in 1999, I felt like I had won the lottery. I mean, she and I are completely total opposite personalities in everything we like, from on the trivial things, movies, films, food, things like that. But we are so aligned on the things that matter in life, like how we view our family, how we want to raise our children, how we feel that people should be treated in the world, and the kind of jobs that we wanted to have, and all those things that matter. And so I think that we were soulmates back then. And now, 24 years later, I feel that even stronger, right? But most of you know, when you get married as an Indian person, you don't just marry a person, you marry the family, right? So I feel like I was really blessed to be joining the Bhardwaj family as well. First, I was already really good friends with Anita, my sister-in-law. I knew her from Rutgers, and I thought that she was one of the most caring people I had met in college. I had also knew my brother-in-law Jathan. I had known him growing up as a family friend. I always thought he was such a smart and decent person. As a matter of fact, I was the one who introduced the two of them on a blind date because I thought that they would be a perfect match, and my instincts, for once, were correct. Jathan and I both know that there's something very, very special about these Bhardwaj girls. And we realized very quickly that it came from the way they were raised by their parents. Now, most of you know my mother-in-law. She's probably one of the most loving people that Jathan and I have ever met in our life, and probably will meet in the future. And although we only had her for a very short period of time, the amount of love that she jam-packed in those short years will not be forgotten in a lifetime. Even now, almost 20 years later, we both still miss the way that she doted on her son-in-laws. Because, let's be honest, we're not getting doted from our wives, right? So our mother-in-law made up for it in spades. Now, Rita's dad, and Anita's dad, he was a little tougher for us to figure out in the beginning, right? Whereas the rest of the family, including the Mossies and the Mossas and the uncles and the aunts and the cousins, everyone was overly warm, overly expressive. But with our father-in-law, he was a bit more stoic at first blush. You know, he would kind of sit there with his arms folded, have like a frown on his face, and you don't know if he's happy or if he's mad, right? But once we got to spend time with him and we got to know him, we realized that he too had a heart of gold. And Jathan and I really cherished the relationship we developed with him over these past few decades. So I want to talk about 3 qualities that Uncle had, which then I really grew to love and admire, and I'm sure it's going to resonate with most of you that are sitting here who've known him. First, he was a very honest and transparent person, right? Some might say he was even too honest. And let me give you an example. We could be at someone's house at a get-together, and sometime in the middle of the party, he would unexpectedly get up, he'd clap his hands, and he would say, "Pinky," and that's Rita's nickname for those of you who don't know. He'd say, "Pinky, I'm bored. Let's go home." And he would say this in front of the host. And I sat there and said, "Oh my gosh, is he just insulting the person who he invited into his house?" But the host didn't seem upset, which I thought was odd. Another time, I remember sitting in his family room. He was asleep on the couch, and I was talking to Rita, and I was telling her about some kind of plan that I wanted to come up with. And all of a sudden, my father-in-law kind of not knowing that he was asleep, he said, you want to know what I think? And I said, yes, obviously I want the acceptance of my father-in-law. I said, yeah, well, of course, tell me what you think. And he said, I think that's a damn lousy idea. And he suggested some alternative, right? But I also did not get mad. In fact, I actually found it endearing the way he acted, because he was always giving really good advice, and the manner in which he said it was actually really endearing to me. So that's the thing about him. He didn't mince words. You heard from his daughters, he didn't sugarcoat things. He was completely transparent, and he always spoke the truth. But it always came from a really good place, and you always knew where you stood with him. So that's the first thing. The second thing that Jiten and I really admired him about was his generosity. Now, if you know him, he was a very frugal person for himself. One time, I made the unwise suggestion to tell him, you have this old TV in your family room. It's like from the 1980s. Why don't you swap it out? And why don't you get like a plasma TV? We can hook it up to the wall and it'll be great. And he said, I think that's a damn lousy idea. Why should I waste my money and replace this perfectly good TV that allows me to watch the news every day, right? And that's the way he was. He didn't care about driving fancy cars. He didn't care about fancy clothes or material things. He was a very practical person. And his wants and his needs were very simple for himself. But for others, his generosity was boundless. So there's many people in this room, not just Jiten and I, but people in this room, people across the world that were the beneficiaries of his generosity, right? In an era where most people invite people to their houses and they're looking at their watches and counting the number of minutes that their guests are going to leave, he was just the opposite, right? He exemplified that axiom, mi casa su casa, which translates from Spanish, my home is your home, right? He took that literally. He invited countless family members, friends, even strangers to come to his house and live there, right? While they were trying to set up their own households. And he always made them welcome. There was a guest room downstairs in the bottom floor of their Beechcroft Drive house. And it was always occupied by someone who was staying there and being helped by him. So imagine for a second like a business model, like Airbnb for friends and family. Only here, you don't have to pay anything. You get to stay as long as you need. You're fed, you're entertained, and you're cared for the entire time. That's basically what he did. It was really amazing. And Jiten and I got to see that, in action. In fact, I have to say, the very first time I met Uncle, it was Rita's high school graduation and Anita's college graduation. I was invited as one of Anita's college friends. And I stupidly or mistakenly rode to the house on a motorcycle, because that's what I was driving at the time. Don't ask me why. Although you can see from the pictures, I was still driving one of those things years later, and he was on the back of it. But I drove to the house on the motorcycle, I attended the party, and it started pouring rain. And at the end of the night, we realized that maybe it's not the best thing for me to drive in the rain. And he said, damn it, we can't let this guy drive home in the rain, he might get hurt. So he invited me to spend the night. I stayed in his living room, the same living room that I ultimately would share with my father-in-law 13 years later, after Rita and I started dating and getting married. So just to add a little more about how generous he was, he built a home in India for his parents, for his in-laws. He paid for relatives' weddings. He paid for his relatives to go to college and medical school. And he spent, and even in his later years, he spent his own money to improve community parks in his area so local kids would have a safe and clean place to play, right? So that's the kind of person he was. Didn't spend a lot of money on himself, but for other people, the sky was a limit. One last story on this. I remember talking to him once about a tenant he had in a townhouse in Twin Rivers that he was renting out. And he had a tenant who didn't have a regular job. The guy was always paying him late. He was months behind on his rent. Sometimes he would pay him with loose change. And I said to him, Uncle, why don't you get rid of this guy? Evict him. Find someone who's responsible, who's reliable, who'll pay you on time. And you know what he said to me? He said, this guy is a man who grew up in a bad part of Trenton. And he wanted to move into Twin Rivers so he can have a safe place for his kids to go to school, good schools, and so they can have a very happy life. So he said, I'm not going to evict this man. I'm actually going to try to help him provide for his family, give him a chance to succeed, even if it means that I lose money in the process. And that really made an impact on me. What kind of father-in-law I had, who would put his own financial interests aside so other people could raise their families in safe areas. So every day, Jathan and I, we're more inspired to be more generous with our time, generous with our efforts, generous with our money, with our hearts, all because we're reminded about all the wonderful things that Uncle did for others unconditionally. And the last area we'd like to highlight is Uncle's leadership. Now, you probably know in Native American tribes, there's always one person, this elder, the tribal elder. And that's a person who's accumulated a great amount of wisdom and knowledge in his or her lifetime. And all the people in the tribe will go to that elder because they're like living libraries and they give sage advice. Well, Rita and Anita's dad, he was that person for this community, right? He was that person who was extremely well-read. He was well-versed in everything from religion to politics and the economy. But most importantly, he was approachable. He was always willing to help people. And so when people needed advice, they would say, let's go to Panditji and find out. He'll know the answer to this. And they went to him. And not only did he give really sound advice, he was also the type to roll up his sleeves and actually help people fix their problems. He was also a pioneer in breaking down all types of stereotypes. He chose his friends regardless of their race or their religion. And at a time when relations between India and Pakistan were strained, his closest friends were Pakistani. And he felt that they were like his own brothers and sisters, and he treated them as such. And we really admire him for being such a role model for others to also always do the right thing, regardless of politics, regardless of social norms. So those are just a few incidents that Jathan and I knew about Uncle's leadership. But people in our community who had a long-standing relationship with him, they knew all the great things he did like this all the time. And that's why he was so well respected, and that's why people called him Panditji. So, in conclusion, our father-in-law had a profound impact on the both of us. In the past few years, they were tough because his health was failing, he couldn't travel, he was getting weaker in age, but we're here today to celebrate him and celebrate his life by remembering him not by these recent events, but rather as his pioneer who spent his entire life being open and honest, who was charitable and would give the shirt off of his back to a stranger, who gave great advice, and who was a pillar in our community. Thank you.
I think obviously everything that Nitin said I am very aware of and have witnessed myself. My father-in-law's character was beyond question. I'm just going to share a couple of very quick anecdotes because Nitin said, as I mentioned, everything that I feel very, very strongly about. His just directness. Let me just give you one very anecdotal example of that, which was in very early on when Anita and I met, and when he knew that potentially this would lead to something permanent. I just remember a phrase that or a statement that he made that made it very clear where he stood, which was, if he thinks she is his girlfriend, he is mistaken. It's very simple, very direct, and to the point. very much in character, and that is exactly what we mean by there's just no beating around the bush. We just knew exactly where my father-in-law stood on everything. The other example, the other thing that I'll always forget in the countless phone calls, because he had made a life in India, so we would speak to him regularly. And with me, I think you've already heard, and you're going to hear from other people, that he was the rock, the foundation. He was the protector. He was the silent doer and the silent giver. And an anecdotal example of that is every time I got on the phone with him, one of his first couple of questions was, Jiten, how's the job? Right? Which is an indirect way of saying, I need to make sure that everything's okay, that my family is taken care of. And it was always one of his first questions. I think that he was silently aware of what everyone's situation was, and it was all about making sure that his extended family and obviously his direct family was doing well and well settled. And just the last thing, we were in India recently. We were very fortunate. I consider myself, Anita, and the kids to be very, very fortunate that we were there just as recently as the end of December, early January. We got to see him, we got to spend time with him. We made it a point, even though he was obviously mentally and physically deteriorating. He couldn't handle more than half an hour at a time. He would just get tired. But he recognized all of us. We went first in March, just Anita and I went, and then towards the end of the year, all four of us went. We knew we had to make that trip, and I'm so glad we did. And those memories will be in my mind forever, those precious interactions. He recognized all of us. Yes, he would lose his train of thought, but I think he was very happy and very joyful to see us, and you could see it on his face. And it's just the last thing about what Nitin said is he was a wealth of knowledge, and I will miss that so much. Anything related to history, politics, you could be assured that he had a view, an opinion, and knew about it. And he was very proud. He was very proud of that, the fact that he was essentially a walking encyclopedia. And even on this trip, when I would try to have a conversation with him about something that was related to current affairs, and if I stated something that was obvious, and I was just doing it because I wasn't sure if he was aware, given his state of mind, his response would be, anytime I brought something up that was obvious, I know, saying, you don't have to tell me that. My mind is still sharp, and I'm still very well aware of what's going on in the world and around me. And I've had so many serious conversations with him, and I will remember those, and I will truly miss those interactions with my father-in-law. Thank you.
So we're going to ask the grandchildren to come up and say a few words for Nana.
Okay, thank you everyone for coming today. So I used to think that grief was a terrible thing, a feeling that was meant to be pushed and shoved away into the farthest recesses of our minds, never to be seen, felt, or even acknowledged unless absolutely necessary. But I recently heard someone speak on the nature of grief that shifted my perspective. They said that grief was actually a quite beautiful thing because it was simply all of the unexpressed love we had for someone that we didn't, and because we never have the time to convey properly when our loved ones are still alive and with us. Whenever I think about Nana, I instantly hear his gravelly, fond voice calling me Maggie girl, Maggie girl. Every time I saw him in his yearly visits to America, it would be with a big bear hug. I would ask him how he was doing and get his resounding reply, well, I'm old. He would hear me vent about my problems with school or friends, and his quintessential advice would be to brush it off, pretend I didn't care, or as he so aptly put it, I don't give a damn. And eventually it wouldn't affect me anymore. I was always in awe of the way he could so easily dismiss the opinions of or judgments of others. His way of connecting with us was to teach us the freedom of being unapologetically ourselves, no matter who told us otherwise. To this day, whenever I find my old teenage insecurities creeping in, his words echo in my mind. I am learning to be brave every day because my Nana paved the way. He was opinionated, witty, loud, confident, a force to be reckoned with. It was his strength and bravery that pushed him to move his family across the world into an unfamiliar path and carve out a new life for himself and those that followed. It is not lost on us that without his courage, we would not be here today. Our love for him has stretched across wide distances and long spaces of time, and it will only continue to do so now. And so I hope that this grief stays with us as a reminder of that love. I know that he and Nani are together again, happy, peaceful, and watching over us forever.
Yeah, I just have something shorter, smaller to say. I second everything that my sister said. Thank you, everybody, for coming today, and it's really touching to see how many people's lives that he's affected and how much love there is for him out there, even though we're across the world. Mom and Mossy have spoken about his life's journey and the special parts about him that they saw as daughters, but I want to speak to the unique way in which I knew him as a grandchild. I was very young. Sorry. When Nani passed away and when he moved across the world. And so the way I know him most is from his visits to the States almost every year until 2018, in which he would stay in our house in Sheldon Treyas for months at a time. His pet name for me was, like Magna's, Sammy Boy, and he would always say it twice every time I saw him. And hearing that in my head always brings back the qualities about him that I cherish most. I knew him as incredibly charismatic, straightforward, kind, funny, intelligent, and at times refreshingly cynical. And these are qualities that I could discern from being a small child, so I feel like there's something particularly genuine about them and something that's really ingrained in his core, and I think that a lot of my mom and Masa and Dad and Magna have spoken to Mossy. Despite, when I saw him for the last time, just 3 weeks ago, all these qualities were still intact. Despite his dementia and general confusion. I'll never forget the way he reacted when he first saw us. His eyes widened and a smile formed with pure excitement and joy. And just for a moment, I felt like I was a little kid again, spending time with my Nana. As I've grown older into a young man, I've gotten to hear more about his life from my cousins. Before me and my cousins came along, from my mom and everybody else. And from what I can see and what I've heard, what I've come to really understand more about him is that he was an immensely courageous person, paving the way for generations of two sides of his family. He went blindly into a new country and built a life for his entire family, which takes a level of bravery and strength that I'm not sure I can fully comprehend. And if he hadn't been, I wouldn't be here today. And I'll be lucky if I can have even half that courage in my life. But it gives me a lot of faith to know that it's in my blood. I'm proud to be the grandson of someone like that, and I'm proud that I'm tasked with carrying on his legacy. Thanks.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for coming. Shreya and I didn't get to spend as much time with our Nana as we would have liked to. Samir said he moved away when we were very young. So we always really looked forward to him visiting us. It was always one of the highlights of the year. And I have a ton of memories and things that he did that inspired me that I'd like to share with you guys today. Coming from a different perspective of his grandson, who really saw him when he visited us. For starters, Nana was very caring, and I really saw that through the relationship he had with all the pets and animals he had. He had many different dogs, and you could always tell by the way he talked about them and interacted with them that he really loved them. You really just saw like how caring he was through his interactions with his dogs. And another thing is when Nana visited us in 2018, we had a pet bird named Jojo, and Nana and Jojo had the most interesting relationship. Every time Nana was eating, Jojo would be on his shoulder at the kitchen table, and when Nana was on the couch watching TV, Jojo would be there at his side. And so I really saw how much passion he had about animals, and that passion and that care really related to everything in life, not only animals, but all the people around him and his family. When Shreya and I were younger, we had to get up really early every day to get ready for elementary school. And one thing I vividly remember is Nana always being up before us and doing yoga in our family room. When I was little, I was always confused as why he would wake up so early when he didn't have a job or anywhere to be to do yoga, but he was always there, and it was always something that we could look forward to. So me being little, I always looked up to him, and I knew that when I would wake up in the morning and get ready to go to school, he'd be there doing yoga. And that really just showed his dedication, and he was really passionate about the things he loved, and no matter what, he'd always be there and do it. And that really showed me that no matter how old you are or where you are in life, you can always push yourself and try and do something to become a better person. I have a lot of great memories of Nana, like going out to seafood restaurants or eating mango in the kitchen. But my favorite has to be watching TV with him, and specifically a show called American Ninja Warrior. American Ninja Warrior is a show about strength, resilience, and pretty much it's one person doing a very extreme obstacle course and trying to get to the other side. And the end goal and all the glory is getting to the other side of the obstacle course and getting a good time. But what I found funny is that Nana's favorite part of it was always when the contestants fell in the water and messed up. I've never heard him laugh as loud as he has when there was a wipeout. That was really his favorite part about it. And I think that shows his unique personality and the sense of humor he has. Even when times are tough, like somebody wiping out and failing, losing their dream, he always found a way to bring a light to the room and have a sense of humor. So I thought that was awesome. And so that's why I really love just watching that show with him specifically, because I always knew I could get a laugh and smile out of him. It was awesome. And in conclusion, even though Shreya and I didn't get to spend the most time with him, he's touched our lives in so many ways, and we're eternally grateful for what he's done for us. Thank you.
Really nice kids. Nana would be very happy to hear you guys speak. Very touching. We'd like to invite Vinod Masa and Ashmasi to say a couple of words.
It's a very emotional afternoon. I know if I break down, just please forgive me. First of all, I want to say thank you to all of you for coming and sharing this solemn occasion of Jijaji passing away. If I have to say something about him, it's very hard for me to, my experience with Jijaji to put in a small few words or few sentences. But all I can say, if I have to sum it up, I can say that he was truly the architect of our lives. Especially me, Vinod, my sister, and Sanjay. He really built our life in America. Ever since I came to America in 1988, he gave us support, guidance, and unconditional love. His sacrifices and selfless love made it possible for us to dream big and work towards them under his big umbrella. For my kids, they were the first grandparents. This is where they learned what love means and what is family. in 14 Beechcroft Drive, we celebrated countless birthdays, holidays, and parties. Their home was open to all at any time. People could just come and be there. Jijaji treated everybody equally. It doesn't matter if you were Hindu, Muslim, rich, poor, big, or small. He opened his heart with generosity for everyone equally. Together, my sister and Jijaji built this beautiful community and nurtured it with so much love and support. Each one of their friends felt they were the closest to him and a heart-to-heart connection with him. The loyalty and respect that he earned in his life is unparalleled. He was the most content and unaffected person, almost like a monk. Material goods had very little significance for him. In his world, there was just love, pure, simple love. But to our utmost sadness, his peace and content was all broken and shattered when my sister suddenly passed away. Because she was his anchor and his connection to the world. He never said it in so many words, but we knew he was broken and rootless. But in his final years, he found comfort and connection again in India, where he built a small set of friends and family who loved and respected him and comforted him till his very last. First, my sister, and now Jijaji's passing leaves a big void in our hearts. A big chapter of 14 Beechcroft Drive comes to an end. A house where each one of our journeys started. But the time moves on and things change. Nothing stays permanent. Today they may not be with us, but their legacy will stay alive in the two beautiful girls, Bubbly and Pinky, Jitan, Nitin, and 4 of his grandchildren, Sameer, Meghna, Shalin, and Shreya, and in all of us. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you all for coming. I think all of us, we have told you about what a great guy he was. My wife used the word architect of our life. I would say he was the founder of my life here because I came to this country with absolute no expectations, with a heavy accent, poor English, which I still have. He could not do much to that. But what he told me that this is a country where it's no nonsense country. When you come from India, you have your own ideas of manipulating things and all. He made me a simple guy, and the 3 qualities that I loved about him. He was a very simple and honest person. The second quality, he lived for others. He was a very generous guy. I still remember there was a time that one of his friends, he was in crisis, and Jijaji himself was not in a very good, he was changing jobs, but he sent a check of $5,000, and I said, Jijaji, are you sure? And he said, I think he needs it more. So that is the kind of a person he was, and I have no words to, say that, we can all try to be inspired by his kindness, generosity, but he was much above what words can describe. I happened to be the last person who spoke to him in this time when I was in India, and it so happened that we knew that Jijaji would be going. It could be a couple of days, it could be 7 days, 10 days, and my sister-in-law who was looking after Jijaji, she called me. I was in Rishikesh. She said, he is being very elated and he wants to go to US. He said he wants to get a flight tonight and go to US. He is absolutely elated. And he used to get into those tantrums so that I am a US citizen, I have to go to US. So she called me. She said, you are the only one who can pacify him. And then I came on the phone and I told him, I said, Jijaji, I am in India. I am coming to take you. I have already booked your ticket. We are going. Okay, you are here? Okay. Coming tomorrow? Okay. And I didn't know that Jesus is ready to go to the brighter world. After a couple of days, he had gone. We'll all miss him, For me, he was my dad, he was my friend, he was my, brother. He was all in one. I would miss him immensely. Thank you very much for all of you for coming.
I wanted to ask Nikki Mosi and Sanjay Mosi to come say a few words.
I've been given the task of speaking on behalf of both of us, so hope I can do justice to who he was. What can one say about Jiaji that hasn't been said before? This evening, over the years, I won't even know where to start. As Jiaji just said, we owe our lives in the United States to Indu Benji and Jiaji. The fact that Nikki was born a month after they got married, I don't know how many of you know that, but that is a fact. In many ways, Benji and Jiaji were less like a brother-in-law and sister-in-law to me. They were more like a parental presence in our lives. From the moment we landed in New Jersey, their home was like a home away from home. Not only was he instrumental in explaining and helping us navigate our lives here, he was a guardian and, of course, our emotional center. I remember the first time I was taking New Jersey Transit to the city, and I was given a detailed set of instructions on how to buy the ticket, what track that I would get the train on, and don't forget to retain the stub. If you don't keep that stub with you, they're going to throw you out of the train. So, these now seem inconsequential details, but the point remains that he was extremely thorough and detail-oriented in every single piece of advice he gave us, each one of us, I would say. Always practical, always real, and very well thought out. I also remember once when we were taking a long cross-country drive, he allowed me to drive the car. He was a person who would never trust anyone to drive his car or drive him anywhere. He had to be in the driver's seat, he had to be in control. But when he gave me the car keys and said, "Acha, ab tum chalaoge," it was almost like it meant in many ways that I had earned his trust and confidence. Sort of, coming from him, it was sort of like getting the Congressional Medal of Honor. The most important and special thing about Jiaji, which everybody's talked about, wasn't the way he did something for you. He never, ever made you feel like he was doing something for you. And I suspect he probably never acknowledged it to himself that he was doing something for anybody. That was that's just who he was. It wasn't like he was doing something for you or making you feel like I'm doing you a favor. He just did it because that was his nature, that was him. Generosity and large-heartedness came to him very naturally. I can't say anything else except that's who he was. And in the past few years, whenever we saw him in India, the way his face would light up upon seeing us, it just gives you sheer joy. We can never express enough gratitude for his presence in our lives, and we were indeed lucky that we had him as a guide and mentor. With him leaving us, we close a very important chapter in our lives, but we're very fortunate that the kind of a person him and Benji were, they've left us a whole community to depend on. So thank you everyone for being in our lives, and thank you Jiaji for being who you was.
Hey everyone. For those of you who may not know us, I'm Manu. This is my brother Neil, and this is Janvi and her younger sister Tanvi. Semasa was our uncle, and I'm very happy to be here to speak a little bit on behalf of all four of us. When my parents and I moved to the U.S. in 1988, everything about New Jersey felt impressive, even magical. Our new home, 14 Beechcroft Drive, was a palace. My aunt, the most beautiful, kind-hearted second mother, was incredible. My cousins, the most doting older sisters, and Samosa, our larger-than-life patriarch. He was strong, funny, deeply generous, and also very playful and funny. Sorry. He was vital and open-hearted, and it was his home that we, Mom, Dad, Neil, and I, made our very own for the first 2 years in this country. As an uncle, Samosa took pride in all of our various accomplishments. He was a cheerleader, rooting and whistling from the sidelines when I danced, thumping our backs when we did well in school and won sports games. But Samosa never fixated on grades or status or material things. He always wanted us to stay curious, learn, strive for better, but never projected his own dreams and wants onto us. He truly wanted everyone to find their own path. He valued independent thinking and self-reliance, something I came to understand and admire about him later in life. My cousins and I, all four of us, loved, and I mean loved, spending every single moment, whether in the school year, on the weekends, or summer long, at 14 Beechcroft Drive. Our fondest memories growing up were eating watermelon in the backyard, sneaking Twinkies and other forbidden treats in the living room, or just curling up to read in Samosa's special chair. Even when he did evict us from his chair quite regularly, he did it with a laugh, and we knew he was never mad. Samosa loved us in his own way. He was not a man of many words, but he had his own language, and we felt his love deeply without ever having to talk about it. It was in his home that we, my cousins and I, had the most joyful times of our young life. One of my fondest memories of Samosa will always be him in a white kurta, playing the tabla, or making any tabletop his tabla, and singing his favorite Anup Jalota song, Tindmasi. Chandi jaisa rang hai tera, sone jaise baal, ek tu hi dhanavan hai kodi, baki sab kangal. This is how I will remember Samosa, always smiling, perpetually singing or humming under his breath, or relaxing in his special recliner, shouting answers at Alex Trebek, or yelling at the news. His house, meanwhile, overrun by us young kids, singing, dancing, raiding his fridge and pantry, playing in his sprinklers, making forts in his basement. Through it all, Samosa remained unperturbed, looking over at our antics from his recliner with a bemused smile and slight chuckle. Samosa was an excellent engineer and knew the value of a solid foundation. Perhaps this is how he unknowingly built the sturdiest, strongest foundation of our own large and ever-expanding family in New Jersey. Every act of generosity and every leap of faith he took in those early years to help my mom, my father, Sanjamosa, and Nikimosi settle here was the bedrock is the bedrock on which our entire family stands today. It is not an over-exaggeration in the least to say that our every success and achievement in life is due to the solid foundation that Samosa and Indimosi have built for us. So today, me, Neil, Janvi, and Tanvi express our heartfelt love, gratitude, and prayers to Samosa for every blessing and success that has come into our lives. We seek his blessings and guidance always. Samosa, may your journey continue in utter peace now, reunited with Indimosi, and with the knowledge that you are so deeply loved and will be missed by so many. Thank you.
At this time, I'm going to call my father to come and speak a few words as an in-law.
Hello everyone. For those of you who do not know me, my name is Sudhir and I am Rita's father-in-law, and this is my wife Geeta. We knew Panditji for a long time now. I always called him Panditji, I never called him Surendraji. Many years ago, when Nitin introduced us to Rita and said that they were going to get married, oh, we felt so happy and fortunate. Can you hear me? Yeah. Let me first thank you, all of you, for joining us to celebrate Panditji's life.
Mic went off.
Hello, can you hear me? Oh, I can, okay. So I guess I'll have to repeat this. For those of you who do not know me, my name is Sudhir and I'm Rita's father-in-law, and this is my wife, Geeta. We knew Panditji for a long time. As I said, that I never called him Surendraji, I always called him Panditji. When many years ago, when Nitin, my son, introduced us to Rita and said that they were going to get married, we felt very happy and fortunate that this sweet, loving girl was going to be our daughter-in-law. When time came to make the arrangements for the wedding, we met Panditji and Induji. We expected that they would be very nice people and great parents because they had raised two wonderful daughters like Anita and Rita. So when we met, the way they welcomed us with open arms, the hospitality, the respect they gave us, that was much, much beyond our expectations. And we felt very fortunate that our families will be united together. Induji and Panditji both were very family-oriented people. Okay, they really cared for the family and friends. We found that they had a large circle of family members and friends with diverse religions, regardless of all that. And they were very close to each other, every one of them. I think it was because of the gluing force of Panditji and Induji that bound all of them together very closely. Okay? And instantly we became a member of, we joined them, joined all of them, and became an integral part of the family. While talking to, I was still trying to figure out Panditji at that time because our relationship was new. I found out that he had helped a lot of people. Vinod mentioned earlier, during their difficult times, he gave them advice. In those days, back, maybe 20, 30 years ago, people who came from India, leaving all their relatives behind with no one known here or no support system, everyone needed all the support they could get from here. And I think Induji and Panditji were the strong force or strong support they got from them. While talking to Panditji, even though I knew that he had helped a lot of people, he never, single time, never mentioned anything about helping anybody. That's when I started respecting Panditji, because I knew that time that was a very humble and very unassuming person with a golden heart. He was always helping others. Just one anecdote that comes to my mind while I was listening to Nitin. He was, as I said, as everyone said, he was a very blunt, very transparent person. See, what happened was at that time, I used to study Indian religion. Indian scriptures. And there is a ashram or religious institute in Kendall Park in South Brunswick, where a Swami or a guru or teacher would give lectures on Indian religion every weekend. So I told Induji and Panditji, why don't you join us? Because I thought that because everyone was calling him Panditji, he must be a religious man. Right? So we went there and we went through this, we listened to the lecture. I thought it was a brilliant lecture. When we came out, I looked at him and he said, I did not understand a single damn thing. I mean, he was that, and that's when I admired. It's not easy for someone to remain that transparent. Okay? He had a good sense of humor. I've always seen him, there is always a smile on his face. I've never seen him worried or complaining or anything like that. So whatever experience I had with him, it was like that. Lastly, I realized that even though I was not religion, he's a different kind of Panditji. Because Panditji also means a wise person. And I had seen him giving advice to a lot of people. He was very down to earth. His advices were always practical, and I learned a lot from him. For that I really have to thank him. When he decided to go to India, we naturally felt very bad. We were missing him, but we knew that he was happy there. And he had made a lot of friends. He had a large circle of friends. He was doing a lot of social work. And true to his nature, he was also helping everyone around him. And that was really a great thing to do. Geeta and myself, we have a lot of memories that we cherish. And we'll always do that in future. I know that Panditji may never be with us in a physical form, but he will always live in our hearts. And thank you. Oh, I forgot. Geeta, do you want to say anything?
I just want to say that Induji and Panditji both were very close to us, and we loved them very much, and we will always love in future, and the whole Bhardwaj family. Thank you.
Before we move on to asking a couple of our very old and dear friends to speak, my in-laws couldn't be here today, but they sent just a quick, I sent it to you. Sorry, 1 second.
It's very, my dad could not be here. He's not feeling well, so he would have really, obviously, very much liked to have attended. But he sent a few words from both of my mom and my dad, and it's kind of confirms what everyone's impression about him is, and you've heard the theme repeatedly about his frankness and his just directness. And so my dad's words kind of echo that. He said, we knew him as the father of Anita and a life partner of Induji, again referring to my mother-in-law. And in our interactions with him, the things that stood out the most and that impressed us were his downrightedness and straightforwardness. He was honest, candid, and plain, and he had no pretenses. And last but not least, and this is again the same thing, quietly helping people. My dad said he was very helpful without expecting anything in return. And I think that's been abundantly clear. And also, I think somebody said it well, one of the speakers, where he probably wasn't aware himself what he was doing for others. It was just in his nature. So that's from my dad and mom. Thank you.
Now, we'd just like to have a couple of my dad's very old friends speak a few words for him. We're going to start with Irfan uncle, who has come from Florida for this day today. Thank you, Irfan uncle.
I don't think I can add any more on the qualities of Panditji that he possessed. Panditji's family has spoken so well about those qualities. But I must say what I want to say in order to pay a heartfelt homage to Panditji, to give a true tribute to Panditji. Panditji was indeed an incredible human being. He was a unique person, that so many qualities resided in him that gave him his greatness, that made him such a lovable person. Many years ago, I read somewhere that you can ascertain a person's greatness from the fact that how many people came to mourn his or her death, and for how long and for how many years a person is remembered after his or her death. I think the proof that how many people came to mourn Panditji's demise is right over here. The people have come from far and wide distances to pay homage to Panditji. And I understand it's not only here. Hundreds and hundreds of people came to pay homage to Panditji in India. And I understand the Speaker of the Lok Sabha also sent a tributary message on Panditji's device. The other example, how Panditji's greatness touched human lives, I'll state it by two examples. When the news of Panditji's demise came, I was with my daughter, Anisa, in Philadelphia. And when I shared this news with Anisa, all of a sudden, her eyes started bubbling up. And she said, "Dad, we must go and visit Anita and Pinky tomorrow." And we did. The other example is my younger daughter, Sabina, who lives in North Carolina. When she heard this news, she said such a touching and heartfelt message of condolence to Ashu. And when Vinod forwarded that message to me, and when I read that message, it brought tears to my eyes. So Panditji's greatness was not only recognized by his family, it was not only recognized by his friends, not recognized only by his contemporaries, but it was recognized by people from all ages. As far as remembering Panditji and how many people are going to remember him, I think none of us is going to forget Panditji. He's going to be a part of our life. People like Panditji, people like Indu, people like Parveen, their parting on death is only fictional, because in the real sense, they live in our heart, they live in our soul, they live in our mind forever and ever. Yes, Panditji was a man of great qualities, and because of those qualities, he acquired in stature, incredible stature, and as a result of that stature, he was able to bring Indians, Pakistanis, Bangladeshis living in East Windsor and West Windsor area to live as a community, living in harmony. Not only in harmony, but giving unconditional love to each other, unconditional care to each other, unconditional respect to each other. And that spirit that Panditji created is still alive. Whenever the members of that community meet, they still carry that spirit in their hearts. And I hope that we can pass on this spirit that Panditji created with us forever and we can pass on to our children. In the end, I want to say two things. One is, I think none of us is going to forget Panditji. Panditji will remain in our heart, Panditji will remain in our memories, and we will remember him very fondly. The other thing I want to mention is a message that I got from Jeshri on the death anniversary of my wife last year. And this message is equally applicable to Panditji because Parveen, Indu, and Panditji were the birds of the same feather. So I will read the message that Jeshri sent, except I'll put Panditji's name over there. Panditji was like that tree that provided shade to everyone while it was alive, and after it ceased to exist, its fragrance still permeates in the mind. So Panditji is the tree, and we are that fragrance which are living right now. So that's what I want to say. Panditji was a great human being. I'll always love him. I'll never forget him. He'll always be a part of my life. Thank you.
We wanted to invite my dad's friend, Beer Uncle. You can say a few words.
You stole my thunder in any case. Well, the greatest thing about Panditji is, as you saw in the pictures, he was always smiling. Always had a smile on his face. And as you heard, my name is Biru Sharma. So I would go to Panditji's house. I said, Panditji sahab, pehle apna naam badlo, wapis make a Sharma again. He would say, no, I'm not going to make a Sharma. You become Bhardwaj. I said, I'm not becoming Bhardwaj. So Indu used to come and be the peacemaker. Then we would sit down. I would say, no, I'm not coming. He said, okay, baar mein ja sahab, baja. So I had a lot of fun. And he was really a Pandit, a scholar. Not in the religious sense, because Pandit word is the learned one. And it is. And another very good quality that you said, the word for that is Samdarshi. He saw everybody equally. There was nobody different than him. And the interesting thing, what you guys did, I mean, where did you learn to understand us old guys? It's compliments to your parents. But do you know, if Surendra was here, he would say, cut this garbage out, go get Biru a drink. Right? He would say, cut it out, go get Biru a drink. We don't want to hear that. And isn't that true? That was the kind of guy he was. It was wonderful. I knew him with Irfan. That was 53, 55 years ago. He and I worked together 55 years ago. So I have wonderful memory. And incidentally, I was talking to my daughters. They said, Dad, we wish we could be there for Surendra. Right? I mean, they haven't seen him for a long time. But love permeates. Love goes all over. They were very keen and they said, as soon as you sit in the car, call us and tell us what happened. And I have a beautiful picture of the Indu Surendra. There was a guy, Dave Oviatt. Do you remember?
I remember him.
At his house. And you know how those old pictures are, album. I spent 3 hours, then I gave up.
Picnic table.
Yeah, so I gave up, but I'm going to find that picture and send it to you. Beautiful, Indu's beautiful picture. So I'm going to send that to you. And had a wonderful time. Thank you for having me. And let's celebrate his life. I'm not mourning his life, I'm celebrating his life. Right?
And if Sham Uncle would come over. Just to give a little background, Beer Uncle and my dad worked together at Ford, Bacon, and Davis back in the early 70s. So that was, I think you're...
No, 70 or earlier.
Okay, so first friend here. And then Sham Uncle and my dad worked at Drake, Sheehan, Stewart, and Dougal together.
Right.
And you introduced us to New Jersey.
Right.
So thank you for that.
It's with a very heavy heart that I'm going to talk briefly. Surendra was more like my elder brother, even though I hired him into the company that we worked at. I always respected him like an elder brother. And in terms of our college, we went to the same engineering school, BIT Ranchi, but I was 2 years his junior, didn't know him there, and he probably ragged me, or that was traditional in engineering college. I don't recall meeting him then. I was asked to interview him when he applied at Drakeshire Institute. One of the partners said that, talk to him. I interviewed him. The minute I saw that he was from my college, and the minute I saw that he had an impressive resume, but more importantly, he had a great personality. Smile, we didn't get very serious in the interview, and I went back to the partner and told him, hire him right now. And it was done. I think the second credit that I can claim was I introduced him to Twin Rivers, and I introduced him to Irfan and family. He was house hunting, and I was largely responsible for telling him that my friend Irfan lives in Twin Rivers, and why don't you go and take a look at Twin Rivers? And initially he was reluctant, and I believe Indu was very upset when she met Irfan and Parveen for the first time, they being Pakistanis. But I think she became Parveen's sister within a week, or the shortest of times. And as you've probably noticed, ever since the Bhardwajes and the Fazlis got together, there have been no wars between India and Pakistan. He always had a very humorous nature, always smiling and always helpful. There's a saying by a poet in India, Sant Kabir, who was a profound philosopher. He said, Kabira sangdi sadhu ki jo gandi ki baas, jo kuch gandi de nahi so bhi vas vas. The company of a perfume seller is like the company of a saintly person is like the company of a perfume seller. Even if the perfume seller gives you nothing, you imbibe the perfume just by his company. Surendra was exactly the perfume seller in our midst. Looking at his life and looking at his decency, we all imbibed, some decent qualities and a sense of humor, because I never saw him without a smile. Although this is a time of mourning, it's also a time of celebration. He lived a very full life, and with deep love for family, friends, and decency in all his dealings. There is a lovely verse from the second chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, verse 13. Dehnasmin tatha dehe komram yovanam jara tatha dehan traptir dhiras tatra numayati. Translation: as the soul passes in this body through childhood, youth, and age, so is its taking of another body. The sage is not perplexed by this. Lord Krishna is trying to explain to Arjun that we shouldn't grieve once a person has lived a full life, because they've fulfilled, like a changing of clothes, passing through all the phases. You're going on to another life. You're basically taking on another life. In the one, humorous thing that comes to mind is the fact that Panditji Suren always had a love for a liquid potion, and I'm hopeful that once he's up there, the gods will make some concession to let him imbibe once in a way. And with that, may his soul rest in peace, and his family and friends have the strength to bear this tremendous loss. I genuinely loved him. We had a great time together, and we always joked and had loved each other very much. Thank you.
If we could ask Gopal Uncle to come up and say a few words, thank you.
Well, much has already been said about dear Panditji here. I'll just say a few things. We first met him in 1976 when we just landed here. And through a common friend of ours, Lalit Kapoor, he introduced us within the first few weeks. And boy, did we click. We clicked off, and the three of us became very good friends. So much so, Panditji moved to Twin Rivers, Lalit followed him, and then I followed both of them. And we all ended up together in Twin Rivers. We developed a very strong bond of friendship within a very short period of time, and that lasted lifelong. Not only a friendship, but a kind of a relationship, which I will tell you. We were fortunate to have been a part of a larger group of Panditji and Indu Bhanji who kept all of us together. They were like the patriarch and the matriarch of this group. I mean, this was unbelievable, you know. He was very loving, warm, caring. It has already come through various messages. His home had open door policy. You did not have to call him to come to go to his home. That is, I've been here in this country 46 years. I have never ever seen any other home like that, where you can walk in any time of the evening or late evening without calling the host. And he would welcome you with warm hug and respect. I mean, so much so that if you came in at about 6 or 7 or 8 in the evening, they will, both Panditji and Indu Bhanji, they'll make sure that you have your dinner there, because with whatever food they had, and their food was always full with fridge was always filled up with food, because Indu Bhanji was very fond of cooking, and she used to cook excellent food, especially the Rajasthani food. Their love was unconditional, totally non-expectant, and hugely warm. So much so that after knowing them very well for a period of time, I started calling their home as my Maika. Now, for the unversed, Maika means in English your parents' home. Their home was my Maika in this country. They gave so much love, so much care, and they really respected you, which was absolutely remarkable. It was fun to be spending time in their company. They were full of laughter, jokes, and of course, very inspirational. Whenever you were in their company, they made you feel good. You didn't want that evening to end. It would be 11 o'clock, it would be 12 o'clock, it would be 1 o'clock in the morning. And they were absolutely fine with that, because they were both late sleepers and they loved to chit chat and mingle with friends and talk to them. His knowledge was absolutely phenomenal. That has also been brought up by quite a few speakers. It was fun to debate with him, to discuss with him any subject on the planet Earth, you know. And he was remarkably knowledgeable about them. And the way he would explain to you in the form of storytelling, it would make sense to you. Like, I was not that good in historical facts and mythology and all that, and he was excellent. And he would explain, and the whole thing would begin to make sense. And we really enjoyed our time and conversations. So having met in 76, and then again, we were very fortunate to have traveled to Jaipur, I and Lily, in 2017. And we had an evening with them, and that evening was absolutely fun. It was same old Panditji with his same old ways, and we had some nice time together. How can we forget that? For years and years, Panditji and Indu Bhanji invited my family for Thanksgiving dinner. Sit-down dinner where they cooked excellent food, and we did that for years and years, and we will always remember and cherish that. As we remember his life today and celebrate his life, he will always remain in our memory, as other speakers have brought it out, And we will always remember him. And finally, I would echo what Meghna said and what Manu said, that Panditji is finally reunited reunited with his cherished and loving soulmate, Indu Bhanji, and they continue to bless us from heavens as always. We were indeed very lucky and fortunate to have been a part of their extended family. And Panditji, we will miss you. We of course have been missing Indu Bhanji all these years, for the last 20 years, and now we will miss him. But boy, they have left a legacy which will always carry on, and we'll always enjoy that. Thank you.
As we are coming to the end of this event, I would like to invite a very special friend. And before that, I'll go over what we have been talking about. Panditji had a very special relationship with Pakistan, with our Muslim friends. I think the best job for him could have been ambassador to Pakistan, but it didn't happen. Here today, I must mention, and I would like to thank two special people who were Panditji's friend, Parvez Bhai, who flew from North Carolina, and Irfan from Florida. So both the friends are from Pakistan. So that tells you that Panditji's public relation was excellent across the border. Now, Irfan and Parveen, they were Panditji's very close friend, and Parveen's younger brother, Suhail, was though he was younger, but he was he happened to be a very close friend and admirer of Panditji. Suhail had gone through a gallbladder surgery and he was not supposed to be going out, but he made it a point to come and pay his respect to Panditji. He is with us today and he would like to share some of his thoughts with us. Suhail.
Assalamu alaikum, everybody. Hello. As he mentioned, I went through the gallbladder operation like yesterday, and my wife was saying that take some rest and do not go. We all know how much you love him. And I told her, only death can stop me coming to this place. That kind of level of respect I had with Panditji. I mean, Panditji was an open book. I mean, it was a novel. If I start reading it, there's no end. We'll be here forever. So I'm not going to go over with all those details everybody knows. We have all talked about it. I'm going to only talk about a few touch points that I had with him, the relationship that I developed with him with time. When I came into 1982 from Pakistan, my sister, who's an angel, she asked me that she wants me to meet with one of her best friends from India, Indu Didi. I had never met an Indian before. And then she took me to Indu Didi's house and I met her. And what a way of the introduction of India when I met Indu Didi. You can't meet the best ambassador of India than meeting with me. And I fell in love with her immediately. I was really fell in love immediately. And Panditji knew it, that how much I loved my sister and Induji. So one day I was in Washington, D.C. working on my IT project, and I got a phone call. And then Pandit Induji was sick, and I picked up the phone. I said, Panditji, everything okay? And he said, your Didi is gone. The next thing I knew, I dropped everything that I had. And my car was driving from Washington, D.C. to the East Windsor house he used to live. He hugged me, he cried. And at that time I realized how I was so close to him, but I did not know that how close he is to me. I never realized that I was so close to him. From that day on, my relationship started building up. And then he became my elder brother, then he became my leader, he's my guide, he's my guru, he became like everything. I learned so much from him. So much humanity, so much relationship. He gave me so much learning of how to deal with people, how to help people. I don't know why. Maybe he knew I was close to Indrajit, and now he knew that I was close to him. Learned so much from him. And I was trying to figure out what is the synergy. And I couldn't figure out why he's so close to me and why I'm so close to him. I could never reach to his level of wisdom. I was only learning from him. I wanted to be always with him. The next big achievement I had was, all of a sudden, years later, I got a call from him from India. He said, Suhail, you're coming, picking him up from the airport. And I'm like, why me? Vinod, Nitin, Ashu, everybody is okay. The children. I said, don't think too much. It's an opportunity. So I went to the airport and I picked him up. And lo and behold, he was with friends together, we were driving, we were listening to music and all that. There was always a child in him, which I realized. Always a child in him. And then he opened up his bag, and in the bag there was a big carton of cigarettes. And then I said, what is this? Made in India cigarettes, we both love smoke. And then he said, keep the rest of the cigarettes, I'll keep only 2 packets, because take this carton, everything will be confiscated. And I'm like, okay, that's easy, that's easy. So I kept the rest of the packets and we reached to Bubbly's house, and same routine, every night I'm over there, we're talking about it, religion, politics. I learned so much from it, no bias, everybody's same and everything. So that was my relationship building up. In the last few days, the last time he came in, he held my hand and he goes, I'm not going to come back again to US. I said, Panditji, why you say that? He said, because my health condition won't allow me to come back here. For some reason, I was really thought that he knew everything. He knew what happened in the past. He knew what's going to happen in the future. I couldn't believe that he said that to me. I said, Panditji, if you don't come, I will take a visa from India and come and meet you. It's very difficult for me to get the visa for India, but I'll try my best. It never happened. But technically it happened because he believed me. I'm going to cherish his memories for the rest of my life. That wish of me seeing him in the end never happened. We believe he has 7 levels of heavens in my religion. I believe he will be in the highest level of heaven, the kind of personality he was. I'll miss him forever, and I will do anything for all the children that he's leaving behind, that in my capacity, and my wife will do. Thank you so much, whoever invited me over here, because it really had lightened me up. By saying all that, I'm feeling a little lightened up. Thank you again, and Panditji, I love you. Stay where you are, because that's the best place for you.
With that, we'd just like to say thank you so much to all of you for your kindness and for coming here today and for the words and the thoughts. That's it. Thank you from all of us.
And around the corner are some refreshments.
Refreshments,
so please,
tea, and please have
and we have
something.
some flowers for my dad's picture if you wanted to come up, and there's also refreshments to the side. And thank you.
No more speeches so far, right? I'm gonna put it just to put it to show that.
make it. She's a bit slow on the feet right now, so I didn't bring her.
Thank you so much for coming. Really
I'm just gonna put the live stream in the
Oh, that's fine. Thank you.
Maya's in a place.
Anisha's here. Oh, good, she is.
Just
Sorry.
1 minute.
Oh my God.
You like it back here? So you're fluent in
No, I'm just seeing how long I can
So nice, wasn't it? I didn't know all those things about like how I knew like people don't stay in the house for so long. Yeah. But there was so many nice to know. I was putting it together. She's okay. She's a transfer. She is a transfer. She's fine. Well, that's fine. Yeah, it's not a big deal. I kind of need to get out from not
That
was so emotional.
It's so hard. Thank you.
That's okay. Oh, you guys are together. How are you? So long. I I know, right?
Never. I would never leave without a hug. I haven't seen you in ages.
I don't know. You would know. I don't I said hello to her. They're gonna go. No, not 19. It should be 18 and more. I haven't seen you in 20 something years. We have more than 30 I mean, maybe from the wedding. I don't even know.
He's just getting back on track, you know. He was out for all of December. So a lot of like catching up to do. When we catch up, I heard you went on your 35th We'll catch up. We'll catch up.
So much.
मैं क्यों जाऊंगा Yeah, I was fellow with Sanjay. I met him a number of times, but I never had one-on-one. So, you know, I knew he was a very talented guy, very organ. What fun we used to have. Somebody for one person, I'm not going to hold it. You will not do it. I'm sure everybody knew what value
And I was there, but I used to always say that.
Sam was the locust of all their
But now it's upon
There's lots of snacks back there. I'm just gonna, yeah, everybody should get something. These are beautiful flowers.
Yeah, thank you.
Just give it to him.
Just come in, sleep, stay for one hour.
Volunteers to sign up. Think about that. Many people have asked people to come and your words made me like
It's not a speech. Your speech was more beautiful than
I really have to Because I had seen him do and I could see like from my later stages very down see the pictures, because I could see the last pictures of when everyone was going
It went so well.
No, I think it was like what he deserves. It was all good
One or two classes. No,
Not college. She's like, let me clarify real quick. Not
I wanted it without She's good. Yeah, you can also just do the board.
I have a little water.
Yeah, but like the ice But during that time, it was actually like it feels like years ago, and flights were canceled. Like I didn't just
In a basement somewhere, trying to like educate ourselves. And we get to hear the things that they say.
I love learning.
Well, you don't think of them as real people who've got friends and they do stuff. They're just your parents.
Even now it's a party.
Very guarded diplomatic words.
Yeah, but that, I think that's not the problem.
They were just finding Yeah, well, if you go up, you should.
No,
I mean, it takes us, like when
Could be worse. Should be in Michigan. They did that for you.
But that being said, like, she's still it's a dual thing. And Michigan
I've seen all of
She's a revolutionary. I did it! I think I want to just for us. She's in the makeup driving my wedding ring. Well, I knew her through you. I knew her. Did you get to see her?
there, but.
I don't even know what to see. I haven't seen there. Yeah, no, I haven't seen it. It's gonna be 25 years. Yeah.
I think it keeps herself stays in her house and doesn't ask questions. Stays really strong. Technology and what you're so positive. So they can be out there. It's okay. It's in Bangalore right now. Old albums are like the plastic. They're unplugged. But they're the same house.
Almost getting to that. Like at least now.
It's nice to see you. Well, let's get together.
But now our kids are not our kids.
It was more like a history, but like I wanted to get from
I'm not a good supporter, but I'm a good
Everybody's
crier.
speeches I cried. She's handing me tissues. I'm like, I've never even met that. God bless, you know, and that's all.
I just feel like we're blessed. They gave us more than enough. We recognize it.
Very well.
The closest train station would be what, like?
Yeah, we don't want to.
This is what we got. We got a lot to do. My dad went in
So it's the same.
and I was like,
So it's the same class as my mom has been with me.
I think it was 5 hours. So I think that's too satisfying. Yeah, it's not that big.
like they're coming.
They're
for a bit.
You can stay overnight.
It's a different life for sure. They enjoy it. They need to. They need their friends and their family.
Oh yeah, you had
Johnny's 7th birthday. No. Yeah, that was really good. No one really Hi, Shanti.
How are you? A long time.
Oh, you're I am, for now.
Sorry, post some. Natasha, can you take a instead?
Hi.
Close enough, because I can.
Natasha, I've known her since before she was and also you. Like a lot, I think I met Lily on Michelle. You were
pregnant with Shanti. Like literally their oldest daughter. And Natasha was like my little baby when she was growing up since her parents now lived in Ohio. But I used to play with her like I pretended she was like my little sister, like my baby to carry.
I have done babysitting for Nitin.
You saw her get her, she called me. So have I have too. Somehow our mom started trying to leave me with him when I was 10 and go to like the grocery store. I'm like, wait, I'm 10.
No, they
He's a
would,
baby.
no, but Mummy, they would leave with me when they were going to New York.
Oh, New York. Okay.
And I used to work from home.
All those times.
Natasha, why don't you stay over the night? Stay with us. You work tomorrow? Okay, then Manu's taking the train, so you can drop you guys together this evening. No, you're staying over?
No, I'm not saying
Or you going to Nina auntie's house to meet, to spend time with her?
Who's deciding?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
Really?
Yeah.
No, because mom wrote to me,
I
said,
could
give Natasha a ride as well.
House hop is to invite everyone.
Yeah, if you really want a house hop, you're
Yeah.
amazing. Also, we were planning to use the train, but I'm guessing you're gonna stay back for a bit.
Yeah, I'll stay back. So are you going to? I don't know.
She has some very busy kayaks.
I'm going straight back.
You're taking the train. Yeah, there's no one.
Another thing kids' lives is so busy.
Yeah, so
Okay, we can just move on.
we drop her from here.
Okay, you're going to drop her.
तुमने कुछ खाया नहीं?
हम ले जाएंगे.
Yeah, there is water bottles and some tea also.
Thanks for coming.
They left, brother. But I felt like that picture that opened it, he's such a sweet teenager. He must have been going to and then it ended with that was his last, when I went in March, I gave him, yeah, but like that was the perfect picture to me. It shows
It's a QR code for like a number. Okay, I'll give it to you. So just give me this one. My phone. So
'Cause I just have to grab this. And these
That
are
was
like-
wonderful. Now,
Yeah, I don't know what we should do with this. We should take the photo. I don't know what do we do?
Take the picture you're gonna tell. You can take the picture.
Okay.
I have also
Okay, so I think that the page we should take also, somebody brought this. Yeah.
Do you want to turn it up and the live stream? Can I end it?
Oh, yeah, yes, thank you.